Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Yanina Doyle, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Hello, wine friends, and welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to introduce someone who is as passionate as I am about wine, and a really good friend of mine who just puts a smile on my face being in her presence, Jacinta Maddison Williams. Now, she is the brilliant and entertaining wine educator behind Inflorescence, which runs anything from paint and sip classes to DIY wine kits at home to full chef experiences with perfect pairings in your own home. But in this episode, Jacinta will be sharing her top 5 favorite lesser-known white grape varieties. These are wines that, if you haven't tried already, absolutely deserve a place at your Christmas table, maybe, or if you're looking ahead, they're perfect for Try January. Yes, you've heard that right. Try January. Forget dry January. It's miserable enough as it is. Let's make the start of the year about discovery. Try new flavors, new grapes, and elevate your wine drinking experience from day one. So get ready to take some notes because Jacinta's about to guide us through a lineup of whites that are guaranteed to surprise and delight. But before that, I want to give you one of my own. And as we are all getting rather festive and it really is that time to pull out those stickies, I want to talk to you about a very special dessert wine. It's truly iconic. It is not from Sauternes or from Tokai. Have you heard of Ben Rier from the winery Donna Fugata, who are based in Sicily and you should definitely have as one of your go-to wineries to try? Now, if you're a lover of dessert wines or you just love wines that tell a story, this is absolutely one for your attention. It's a wine that feels like it's bottled sunshine. It radiates from one of the most unique and captivating terroirs in the world, Pantelleria. Now, why is Ben Rier so desirable? Well, I opened up recently the 2022, and it is not like any other dessert wine in the world. Bizarrely, it's kind of in your face, intense, but yet it's subtle at the same time. It leaves you analyzing each sip with this ultra crystal clean, pure fruit on the finish. I got limoncello, orange musk, lilies, clove on the nose, and it's a little bit grapey, but with more dried sultanas wrapped in acacia honey. And then there's this ripe mango and papaya. It is intense. And then on the palate, it's unctuous with honeyed apricots and peach syrup, but then with figs and herbs in the background and this vibrant, intense burst of orange and stone fruits. Even though it's rich, it feels really light in your mouth with this citrus pine acidity cutting through. So really, truly, each sip is very unique. And it's no wonder that this wine is constantly one of the most celebrated dessert wines globally, with most definitely a cult-like following. So for those of you who haven't heard of the wine, Passito di Pantelleria, it is a style of dessert wine. It's made on the tiny island of Pantelleria. It's off of the coast of Sicily, although the island itself is far closer to Tunisia. Here, the grape of choice is Zabebo. Now, this is also known as Muscat of Alexandria. These grapes, they thrive in the island's volcanic soils, and there is relentless sun, which concentrates their flavors into something truly extraordinary. Then there's the super strong wind here, hence the choice of name for this wine, Ben Rier, which in Arabic means the son of the wind. And because of this intense wind, many vines are trained low to the ground as bush vines, and they grow in hollows for protection. And the vineyards tend to be terraced. They're bordered with these stone walls. And for all of these reasons, in 2014, the traditional cultivation of vines on Pantelleria was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So labor here is about 3 times harder. And additionally, from the fact that the production of this wine is taking the Zabebo grapes and they're picking them and laying them out for up to 4 weeks to be dried by the sun and the wind, which concentrates their flavors and their sugar levels as they dehydrate. So for these reasons, you get an incredible wine. But not at the cheapest costs. But if you are going all out this Christmas and want this very legendary example, expect to pay about £50 for a half bottle. I found you can get that from Hay Wine Merchants. Or if you want the full bottle, if you're doing the whole thing, Hick Wine Merchants is selling it for £84. And this will go with any of your spiced or chocolatey or caramelized desserts for this festive season. But before we go to the chat, I want to give a quick thank you to my sponsor of this episode, Coravan. Now, last week I started talking about their very magical Coravan sparkling preservation system, which just opens up a world of opportunity for all of you sparkling wine lovers. I got myself way too excited last week about the idea of being able to open up a Prosecco next to a Cava and then a Champagne and compare it to Cap Classique. I mean, this is brilliant if you're studying for your WSET diploma, where there will be a blind tasting of sparkling wines. And you can do all this with the Coravan sparkling system because it keeps the wine fresh for up to about 4 weeks after opening. Now, if you missed last week's episode and you don't remember how it works, this doesn't have a needle. It's different from the original preservation system for red and white wines. Here, you pour yourself a glass from your sparkling wine bottle and then you attach the Coravan sparkling stopper to the now open bottle. Then you use the pressurizer, or which Coravan calls the charger, and you press this down on the stopper, which will just inject argon gas into the bottle and you are done. And this also works on magnums too. So in case you have maybe one special bottle and you just want to enjoy it slowly over the course of a month. So if you love fizz and you aren't someone who not accidentally, drinks a full bottle every time you open one, this is so worth looking up. And if you haven't sorted your Christmas shopping yet for a sparkling wine lover, this might be the perfect time to pop over to Coravan's website to see more about it. And now get ready to discover 5 must-try wine grape recommendations that deserve a spot on your list. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this fantastic episode with the amazing Jacinta. So we have to start. I want to find out from you, why are you so passionate about wine? What happened? Was there one moment, one glass? What did it for you?
So the passion for wine actually started quite a few years before I ended up doing anything with wine. And I have 2 very specific moments. One was in a little wine bar in Notting Hill that is sadly no longer there. It was this gorgeous little French one on the corner. I can't think what it was called now. We're talking kind of probably 16 years ago or so. And I was with a friend who was a little bit older and he was very into his wine. And he ordered a bottle of Margaux. I don't think it was a Chateau Margaux. It would have been some other more reasonably priced. I remember being like, oh, this is very expensive at that age. But it was a Margaux. And I just remember having that moment where you're just like, wow, this is absolutely, I actually described it as, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the podcast. I described it as an angel pissing in my mouth. I don't know if I was allowed to be that naughty this early on in the chat.
Well, everybody listening, this is apparently we've lowered the tone, and this is where the podcast is going.
To me and you having a chat together. When is the tone ever high?
It's always questionable.
And then there was a second moment with a white wine, which was a Purée Fusée. I think it was in one of Marco Pierre White's like pubs in the middle of the countryside somewhere. And again, just had a sip of this wine. And I just still remember it so clearly, just being like, wow, I did not realize that white wine could taste like this. And just every sip, I was like, I don't understand what I'm drinking here. This is just phenomenal. And I just, absolutely obsessed with it. So they were the 2 key moments that I still really clearly remember, just falling in love with wine. But then it was years later that I actually did anything about it. So Inflorescence kind of came about 5 years ago now. So in 2019.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thanks. Yeah, very exciting. Happy 5th birthday. It was very fun. Such a good milestone. You feel so proud of yourself.
You should.
Oh, thank you. So I've had a bit of a funny old career path.
Doesn't surprise me.
Kept my hands in absolutely everything. So started after leaving school as a singer-songwriter, but as like wanted to do that full time, but I had a backup career that I wanted, because I wanted to make sure I was also doing something else I loved. I didn't want to be one of those singer-songwriters that works in a restaurant as a waitress till they're like 40. So I thought, what's the other thing I would love doing if this doesn't come about? And I really enjoyed film editing. So I started in TV production and film production. So I was doing that alongside. So I was doing that for quite a few years, dabbled in a bit of floristry as well.
Okay.
A little creative touch to me as well. So did that. And then my next natural step, of course, was to buy a restaurant, as you do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure. So, in everyone's path.
In everyone's path. Why not do something completely different you've never done before?
Okay.
So I basically had a friend that had worked in restaurants for years. So his natural next step would be to have his own restaurant. And I said, I want to break from full-time film editing. So how about we get one together? And when you have those conversations, those drunk conversations that you just keep talking about the same thing. And eventually, like, we've spoken about this too much now. We just need to get on with it. And I didn't know, obviously, how to run a restaurant. I've worked in hospitality, I've been a waitress and so on throughout the years. And I am the hostess with the mostess. So I do love hosting dinner parties and I like entertaining people and so on. So I said, if I cover front of house stuff and I make the restaurant look good, because I also love interior design, you teach me how to run a restaurant and we'll go from there. And that was sort of how the partnership was born. So we bought this restaurant called Bobo Social in Charlotte Street in Fitzrovia. Had to learn how to be a builder, setting it all up, because it was there was like mushrooms growing in the basement and all sorts. It was absolute chaos.
Oh, well, that would have been free food. I mean, in this day and age.
Exactly. I'd be like, we actually ferment our own mushrooms. So set that all up, learned how to tile a floor and all sorts. Very exciting.
Wow, you're very useful.
Yeah, very useful.
Everybody, I will be leaving Jacinta's details in the show notes. So DIY. Should you need anything doing in your life, she probably can do it.
So I opened that in 2014. And it was just the most amazing first year. We had Faye Mashler, my absolute hero, Grace Dent, came, gave us 4 out of 5 stars, which is just amazing. Giles Coren. So yeah, incredible. First few years, loved it. Obviously incredibly hard work, but was amazing because I was around wine all the time. And I was just getting to taste all these things, when you're setting up a new wine list with the wine supplier and they bring all these different things to taste and you just learn so much in that kind of packed 2 hours. And I just looked forward to kind of changing the wine list every quarter and just learning more and more. So that was kind of really where the wine passion developed even further. And then I ended up being the head chef for the last 2 years. So because I just was like, they're not doing it well enough. Get out, I'll do it. Which is good because I love cooking. So I actually really, really loved that side of the business. But eventually it just did mean I was kind of there 90 hours a week and I just got absolute burnout. Not fun at all. You kind of forget what you actually enjoy in life apart from being in the restaurant. So yeah, I just needed a bit of a change. I ended up selling my half to my partner. He's carried it on, which is great. And then I think once you've worked for yourself pretty much your whole life, it's hard to then just go and work for someone else. I am not again.
Having a boss.
Yeah. So I was like, do you know what? I love wine. I want to know more about wine. I want to know everything I can know about wine. I want to taste all the wines. So I did my WSETs and I kind of found that during tastings and so on that I was doing while I was learning, I just found so many of them were quite pretentious and quite snobby, as I'm sure you know.
Little.
Yeah. And I thought it doesn't need to be like this. Wine is really fun and I want it to be fun and I want it to be fun for everyone. I don't want it to be fun for the people that already know wine. I want it to be fun for the people who don't really know wine and want to know more in a comfortable environment. So that's kind of how Inflorescence started. I just wanted to make it approachable and fun for everyone. So yeah, set Inflorescence up. About a couple months after that, lockdown hit. And actually that was great because then all my DIY kits and all these virtual tastings happened. And actually I thought I'd left the restaurant to be a bit more calmer in life. And here we are doing 4 or 5 tastings a day, 4 hours sleep. Absolutely chaotic time, but an amazing start, obviously, for the business. So it really was an incredibly special time setting that up and getting to meet so many people virtually every day.
I can imagine. And then I suppose, as you have been continuing with your wine business, you've been working your way through wine grapes, wine varieties. And so why is it that when I asked you, what is the theme of today? What are we going to talk about? You said we need to talk about the unknown varieties, lesser known varieties. What is it?
Yes. So Right. Firstly, I love an underdog in anything. I'll always support the sports team that's not supposed to win.
Bless you. I know. You are so kind.
But I think, I just think, I think it's more exciting than having Savvy Bee all the time and Malbec all the time. I think it's definitely something more interesting to talk about. And I think I try and with my tastings, I try and do kind of affordable price points for all the guests that come. So something that you could just buy midweek. And I also love it if you can find a bottle that is, say, 10, 12, 15 pounds, but tastes like 25 plus. Like, who doesn't want that?
You're winning.
Exactly.
You know, somebody said to me when I was learning about wine as well, a tip, it doesn't always work out this way, but if you can't pronounce the grape variety, then it's probably going to be good value.
I really love that. Because consumers won't know how to say it, so they won't order it.
Yeah, and so it has to sell cheaper.
Yeah, no, that's actually probably very true.
Well, so let us start with, you gave me a list of 5. I want to take us to Japan, and I have not tasted this grape variety.
We're going to drink a bottle in the new year.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the grape Koshu. I mean,
okay.
Do we pronounce it Koshu?
We do pronounce it Koshu. Also, you're going to have to forgive me if I pronounce anything in a very unexciting way in this podcast. You pronounce everything so beautifully. So I will be taking my lead from you.
I try to, and then I get told off by the people from that country.
You don't. Surely not. I remember you telling me about Vergelegen.
Vergelegen, the winery in Stellenbosch. Yes, in South Africa. Yeah, there's a few that I get right. But okay, let's talk about Koshu, because this is actually super interesting, a really light, kind of citrusy, delicate grape.
Use a glass right now. It's how did I come across it? I actually came across it because I was looking for female winemaker wineries for a little series I was doing. And I stumbled across this one. And the grape variety they make there was Koshu. And I'll tell you a little bit more about their winery a bit later. But so Koshu, generally speaking, is grown in Koshu Valley in the Yamanashi prefecture. So that's where it gets its name from. And interestingly, while it's a white grape variety, it's actually got that pinkish skin like Pinot Gris.
It's so beautiful. If somebody,
it's really pretty.
Literally, if you type in Koshu, that's how you spell this grape. It's so rose-coloured. It's really unique.
It's really unique. And it's got this, it's very soft and aromatic. It's full of citrus, peach and jasmine. And what I really love, yuzu. I always get this. I don't know if it's just because you're thinking of those kind of Asian flavors, but it's what I like about it is it's a really familiar style of dry, crisp white wine, but it's also got this real uniqueness to it. And it's almost something you can't quite put your finger on, but it just makes that glass of white wine that much more interesting. And it's just a really lovely, again, you kind of, I don't know if it just goes really well with Japanese cuisine because you think it's a Japanese wine. So therefore the natural pairing is something like sushi, but it is really great together. And as you know, I love my food and wine pairings. So I'm always, what goes with this? What can I eat with this? I like food. I want to eat something while I'm drinking.
But I think this makes sense, you know, and this episode is coming out around Christmas and we indulge a little bit more. So sushi and sashimi are things that maybe we might get as a takeout. And those kind of, they're fatty, but at the same time, they're quite delicate themselves. So having a quite slightly aromatic, but like a delicate, fresh style of white wine
really works well with that.
And not from my experience, but from learning about it online. Thank you, internet. Actually, this is a great variety with quite low sugar. So typically, if they are making a dry version, the alcohol level
is actually quite low.
Right, around even 10%.
Which is great, right? Because so many wines now, as we know, are just really high. And you're a bit like, oh, I need to limit how many glasses I'm having without feeling too horrendous the next day. So this one is, perfect. It's actually, it's very sort of mountainous in that region. So it's got quite a cool climate, which I think helps with keeping that kind of fresh acidity and lower sugar levels. They've got really lots of sunshine and lots low rainfall, so loads of time to ripen and really develop the flavors, but without, like you said, without getting too much sugar. So it's a really interesting region to explore. And kind of all of the Koshu grapes come, about 90%, I think it is, come from that area. So it's packed in. Should we go?
We definitely should, because if anybody was to look up this wine region, it's at the base of Mount Fuji, which is Japan's highest mountain.
Exactly.
So, and I've looked and it just looks stunning. I swear anything Japanese is just, the nature is insane. It's only about 2 hours from Tokyo. So, you know, it's not an absolute trek. It's not that terrible. And the Yamanashi region is Japan's first geographical indication. This is the birthplace of Japanese wine. And it has an absolute huge, amazing mountain just right there as well.
Incredible. And it's really interesting because quite a few years ago, so many of the vineyards uprooted their Koshu and replaced it with just more well-known varieties.
International varieties. Yeah.
And now that it's kind of come back round, they're getting replanted because they're realizing that actually people do want just a Japanese wine and it's okay to just have a Japanese wine. So I thought that was really cool that they're getting put back in and they're celebrating what they do.
Well, good, because this is apparently a grape variety that has been planted there for over 1,000 years. So it's nice then that they're going to try and champion it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously I have to hold my hands up. I have never tasted this grape. So there's me as well going, oh God, okay.
Well, this is going to be your try January then, isn't it?
It's going to have to be my try January. I looked up and it seems that Grace Winery is is that where you went?
That literally, I haven't been, but that is literally the one that got me into it. So it's Ayana Misawa. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. That's their head winemaker at Grace Winery. And I think if you're going to try one, that's where you need to start because it's just unbelievable. And I think it's one of those wines that, like I said, because it is quite familiar. So if you're used to drinking things like Pinot Grigio, if you're not, super explorative when it comes to white wines, then this is a really nice one to go for with just having a little touch of something different.
Love that. Well, it's looking on the internet, it seems that this is the winery that's probably, certainly in the UK, exporting the most. So I imagine, again, for my listeners in America and other places, maybe this is a winery that's probably a good one to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Right. Well, I've put that on my list. Thank you.
Excellent.
I feel really bad. Here I am presenting a podcast and I'm like,
isn't this what it's all about?
Yeah.
No matter how long you've been in wine,
Totally.
You just constantly keep learning, don't you? You can never know it all. There's too much to try.
100%. But I'm happy to bring it back to a grape variety that I champion all the time. Yes. So if anyone was getting a little uncomfortable with this grape variety that they didn't know anything about, you should hopefully maybe have heard of Assyrtiko.
See, you've pronounced it so beautifully. I actually used to say it wrong. I used to say Assyrtiko and then got told off. And now I say Assyrtiko. But you just add this little pizzazz to it that just sounds so much cooler.
This is why I love you. But, this is the point. It doesn't actually matter. You should never be afraid of how you pronounce things, because I remember when I took on a head sommelier role in a top restaurant in Mayfair, I was so nervous and stressed talking about the French Bordeaux or Burgundian wines and pronouncing the name of the chateau. Again, the same for an Italian winery. And then I realized, but hang on a minute, I know about the wine and I know what's in it and I'm here to guide people. Plus, I don't know every wine in the world, but I know the wines on my wine list. That's where I'm the expert on this wine list. And so, yes, okay, if I don't pronounce the E correctly or the vowels correctly, that still doesn't take it away. And so you have to, for anybody learning, wine is always a journey. You're never going to know everything about it. You will sometimes get things wrong, but actually the pronunciation is actually the least important.
You're right.
part.
That's a really nice way to look at it. Thank you. You're probably just making me feel better about
there's no, unless you speak every language in the world, you're never going to get it right. So let's talk about Assyrtiko for a second, because obviously Santorini has, my gosh, apart from the fact everyone loves the idea of going to travel to Santorini, but this super high acidic mineral, like racy wine. Why is this one of your favorite lesser known white grapes?
So, like you said, super mineral. I love a really mineral white wine, I have to say. But I think it's not just about the minerality. I just think it's packed with flavour behind that minerality kind of front wall. You've got loads of floral notes. You've got stone fruit. You've got citrus. And it just is, it's so versatile. So I just love pairing with lots of different foods. Gorgeous on its own, but it's just so drinkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I love that you can, so many different areas are growing it now. So while it's, indigenous to Santorini, grown in loads of places in Greece, I actually used one, which I'll talk to you about, from Lebanon.
What?
Yes.
Whoa. An Assyrtiko from Lebanon.
An Assyrtiko from Lebanon.
Oh, well, okay. Who's the producer of that?
So Chateau Umsiat. I've actually got a bottle here to show you.
Yeah. I know Umsiat, but I didn't know that they did Assyrtiko.
Well, there you go. Now you know. Just phenomenal.
So typically, for anybody who's listening, if you want the most mineral, then you go to Santorini, that's the volcanic soils, and you've got all the wind, and it's a quite much more kind of extreme terroir, hence the intensity of the grape. And when you go inland, it often is much peachier and less mineral. But still, actually, you can typically get much better value Assyrtiko from the mainland of Greece these days. But tell me now what your opinion is of having this Assyrtiko from Lebanon.
So I loved it so much. I actually put it on our wedding wine list. So as you can imagine, when I got married this year, I had to make the wedding dinner all about the wine pairing.
Of course.
All my guests would have been disappointed if there wasn't an intensely paired entire 4-course meal with the wines. So what I actually want to do, because I kind of narrowed down all the wines that I have loved over the years that are obviously affordable enough to mass give on a wedding. And I then was like, how do I narrow this down? And so I chose all husband and wife owned wineries.
Oh,
which I just thought was really, really sweet. So
that's beautiful.
That left me with just such a gorgeous list of wines. So I had English sparkling, of course, no champagne, English sparkling all the way from Bluebell in Sussex.
Yeah.
And then we had the Assyrtiko from Chateau in Lebanon, and that paired with a brill and a risotto starter. But it had loads of these lovely flavors. And there's enough power in the Lebanese Assyrtiko to stand up to a little bit more than just delicate fish. The actual base of the dish was quite a lot richer. And yeah, this Lebanese one, like I said, it's just, a bit more power behind it. It's still really light-bodied and very drinkable and mineral, but just has a bit more of that floral and stone note flavor behind it. So that was just lovely. We had Llewyn Kwal, I'm going to say this wrong, Llewyn Kwal family vineyards in South Africa.
Oh, Llewyn Llewellyn? No.
Llewyn Kwal. Llewyn Kwal. Well, good. If you don't know, I'll just say it's Llewyn Kwal. And that's how it's now pronounced. That was a Sanso rosé. So that was lovely. A bit more of an unusual style of rosé, just using Sanso. And then had a Five Ravens was the winery, Pinot Noir from Romania to pair with our gorgeous lamb. It's a very summery style of lamb dish. It was just lovely. And I really loved that they were all husband and wife owned. I thought that's a good omen to put on a wedding.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. So yes, that is, and Romania, always great value wine can be found from Romania. Totally.
Yeah.
So then let us go to our next wine, and you've chosen Chasselas or Fendant, which is, depending on the region, how they're going to call it. So we've come to Switzerland now.
Yes. So Chasselas, actually, now we've had quite a couple of aromatic grapes, haven't we? It's a fairly neutral grape, and it's completely dependent on the terroir of where it's grown as to what characteristics it takes on. So it's quite similar to Chardonnay, I guess, in that sense. It's quite low in acidity. It's got this really creamy mouthfeel. But interestingly, and the kind of magic behind Chasselas is while it's got quite low acidity, it doesn't make it not refreshing.
No, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Crisp.
You kind of think it'll feel
really
quite flat, but it's really crisp. Yeah. And you kind of think, I want this with a fondant, with the cheese. Fondant? No, that's chocolate. Fondue. I would like this with a cheese fondue. And you're like, but it doesn't have the acidity. So actually would that work? But somehow it still feels really fresh, doesn't it?
Well, I guess it's because when you think about Switzerland, and obviously, each terroir is slightly different, but if you're going to stereotype anyway, we're talking about cool alpine on hills, much, much cooler climate anyway. And it has that. So that's where that refreshing alpine zing, I think, sits with
that
the
makes
wine.
Total sense. Yeah.
Right? So should we go with that?
Definitely. Yeah, let's go with that.
No, but it does. It gives that
the
fresh.
Magic's got to come from somewhere, hasn't it?
No, totally.
It comes from the Alpine.
And at the end of the day, Lake Geneva in the Vaud region. So Vaud and Valais, aren't they? These are the main places where you're going to find this grape. But oh my God, I haven't been. Another region to tick off. But literally, there's a specific sub-region called Languedoc, and it's right on Lake Geneva. It's kind of, I think, where they think this grape variety actually originated from. It's so steep. Again, this is one of, like, we talk about Mosel in Germany being one of, like, the super, super steep hills. I mean, Switzerland anyway is just filled with steep hills of vines. But here, it's so magical. So again, for anybody who's just interested in another beautiful natural wine trip, and Lake Geneva, why not go? It looks absolutely magical on the pictures, and the wine coming out of that region is absolutely beautiful.
Gorgeous. We can actually get Bluebell vineyards I mentioned earlier in Sussex actually do a Chasselas, pure varietal. Mad.
I've never tasted it, but yeah,
it's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you don't want to venture all the way to Switzerland, pop yourself down to Sussex. It was gorgeous. I really loved it. And I think it was like £20 a bottle, so not too out of the realms of possibility either for a little tipple.
It's in keeping with all English wine ultimately, so it's not far. Well, it's interesting that obviously again, Chasselas, it grows in France and, and other places.
Sense to grow it here, doesn't it? But it's the only English winery I've seen it at. Have you seen it at a few more?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to say, I don't know if this statistic is right, but it's something like 2%, something really low of Swiss wine is actually exported. They keep it all in their own country, and that's why it's quite difficult.
Keep the good stuff for yourself.
Yeah, well, you've chosen Chasselas, but actually Petit Arvine as well. I find really, really interesting.
Yes.
And
yeah, you're right. So good. That could have been on the list as well.
It could have been. I mean, that's in. I've got a bottle in my fridge because I went to Switzerland for a work trip. Last year. Oh, nice. I did not go into Geneva. I went into Zurich. And actually, so this is my only visit in Switzerland of a wine region, but they have Baden, not to be confused with Baden-Baden of Germany.
Okay.
They're not that far apart. But anyway, Baden in Switzerland, it's really famous for its Pinot Noir. So that's Blauburgunder. Pinot Noir with all of its different names, but they call it Blauburgunder. And there's a special name called something like the Golden Hill, the Golden something there. It's basically this place. This is literally 30 minutes on the train, Baden, from Zurich, so super close. And then you can see these super steep hills planted to Pinot Noir on their golden slope, golden whatever it is. And the soils are really, really interesting because this is like a thermal spa area that the Romans found thousands of years ago.
Oh, that's interesting, because Baden in Germany is also a spa area. There's probably a translation in the word Baden that means spa.
Yeah. And I think actually to stop confusion, they call this Baden die Zurich or something like that as well, if need be. Yeah. Anyway, I digress because I don't have enough information on the naming. But yes, and actually there's a spa place here. You can literally go to the spa. Everything is so expensive in Switzerland, but it costs €40 for about 3 or 4 hours in the spa. It's so worth it. Everything is perfect. And you can go outside onto the pool area outside, and directly opposite is a steep hill planted to Pinot Noir and some beautiful quaint little houses. And it's all a bit Bavarian and Germanic as well, because of that's the area we're in. And so, yeah, even that made me realize, oh my God, and the beauty, and there's so many hills and places to walk around. So that's my experience there. I grabbed some Petit Arvine and brought that back. So as well, there's a variety as well that can be dry and it can be sweet. And again, depending on where it's planted, it can be more stone fruits if it's late harvest, but it just is also another great variety that just has this lovely, fresh, citrusy nature if dry. So yeah, there's some really cool Swiss grape varieties.
Nice. Yeah, definitely.
That we should be hunting down, should we not?
Should. Yes.
So do you have a favorite Chasselas? Do you have, or of course, a Fendant?
Yeah, what kind of brought it back to my attention this year? I was in the Black Book wine bar in Soho.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
That was my new discovery also this year. And I realized from business receipts, I've been once a month for the last 4 months.
Business.
Yeah, business, definitely business.
All work.
Having a very important meeting every time. And the first time I went, I had as they labelled it, a fondant, Domaine de Beudon, Beudon. And honestly took my breath away. It was almost like that first Pouet Fusé moment I had when I tasted it. I just, really just so unique, and just didn't want the bottle to end at all. It was really gorgeous.
And I assume this is from Valais, because for everyone, my understanding is they call it Fondant in Valais and they will call it Chasselas
I did actually read that.
Everywhere else.
Yes. Yeah.
In case anyone. And do you know why it was called Fondant?
No.
Because, oh God, here we go. And you're talking about my pronunciation, but actually in French, c'est fondant or something like that basically means to split. So anyone French who's shouting at me now saying it doesn't mean to split or will split, or anyway, because when you squeeze this grape variety between the skins and the pulp, it splits. Really, really
so
easily.
Interesting.
And so
I love that.
That's why it got the name. It's always
very cool.
Isn't that fun? Yeah. Thank you.
We've got another fun grape with a good story behind the name coming up now.
Or do we? Which one's that?
Well, I kind of want you to say it first. I'm going to give it a go.
Right. So basically,
Okay,
I have to do the pronunciation. So I'm
going to go first, and you're going to tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
You won't say I'm right, but we'll give it a go. Loin de Loy.
So I don't know if the first part loin or loin. I've always thought it's loin. Maybe.
Okay, loin.
Loin de loy. Loy. So everybody, this is Loin, loin. So that's how de, and then L apostrophe OEIL, which stands for I. So when you say I
in French,
I in French is apparently pronounced oi. Oi. So I'm going to go with like loin de loy.
Loin
de loy. But then this same grape variety can be called len de lel.
Yes.
Oh my God. And hence, remember the rule. If you can't pronounce it, it's got to be good value.
Yes. Yeah. And I did actually, because I tasted this on a trade tasting, and I did ask the winemaker to tell me about 5 times how to say it. And I thought, I've definitely got this nailed. And every time I go back to read it, I'm like,
no.
Loin de loyal.
Yeah, loin de
well, I always put the L on the end.
Yeah, loin de loy. I think loy.
Okay. Anyway.
But I love that you've mentioned this. And remember, when you said to me that you wanted to talk about this, I got very excited because everybody in the UK currently right now, as part of the Discovery collection in Sainsbury's supermarket, it's about £9-10. I can't remember.
Amazing.
£10 maybe. I can't remember the price, but very affordable. They have a bottle of this, and I'm just showing you to the camera, but obviously no one else listening can see it. But you told me that, and I was like, this is absolutely brilliant because perfect timing. I have a lot of American listeners, and I think in their supermarkets, things are very mass marketed, and they don't have, from what I've heard, that creative spark that our supermarkets are really fighting for, because they want to overly compete with the independent wine merchants. So they've always got these new discovery things, and Waitrose as well.
Yes, loved and found.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do it, but they
do. Yeah, and also M&S have got it's just found, isn't it? Their found range.
Okay,
Waitrose is loved and found. I didn't realize Sainsbury's had a kind of unique
discovery collection.
Well. So that's very exciting. Discovery collection. I'm going to go and check that out.
Yeah. Well, okay. So not only has this got a weird name, yes. Are you going to explain to everyone listening what the name means?
So it means far from the eye.
Yeah.
And that's down to the position of the fruit from the
bud. Yeah.
The bud would be the eye, essentially.
Yeah,
and it's got very long stalks, hasn't it? So the fruit actually hangs quite far from the bud, essentially.
If anyone Googles it, you'll see it. And then just Google any other variety like Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, and you'll see.
It's quite a stark difference, isn't it?
Yeah, because you can't even see the stem or the stalk, because the bunch is basically almost effectively on the fruiting cane. It's there, it lives there. Whereas here, it really hangs low. So again, another great
it's really
variety,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I love learning all the reasons why grapes are called what they're called.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I've got a really weird one for you later.
Oh, okay.
That's coming up.
Okay, everybody. That means you need to keep
now
tuned in. Don't quit on us just yet. So what is it with this grape variety for you? What is it?
So I think similarly to the Chasselas, like we were speaking about, it's got that kind of almost, you could compare it to Chardonnay, more like a Macon style Chardonnay. So you get this kind of lovely apricot, almond tart, honey, vanilla cream, all that kind of lovely rich goodness, but you still have that freshness of citrus, and you've got floral. And again, it was one of those wines you just have a sip and you sort of step back and go, oh, okay, I want another sip of that. I want to see what goes on my next sip. So I think that's kind of what grabs my attention. I haven't actually had loads of it. I think I've only had a couple of bottles. So it's something, again, I could explore more, but I just remember it being one that really stood out to me as something that you need to try if you've not had it.
Yeah, and to be honest, it isn't easy. If you look on the internet, there's actually not much information about it. What I found from my experience of drinking this, though, the acidity level is a little bit lower, which is actually not a bad thing, because actually it means it feels like it's got a lot of nice mouthfeel, and it was quite giving with the fruit. Again, going kind of stone fruits, I think maybe, and then a slightly honeyed note, but I loved it. There was a slight maybe herbal edge to it as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So for me, more so than even the grape variety, it's quite clearly yummy, it's nice, but also it's from Gaillac, which is a region in the southwest of France, which funny enough, actually, I have a personal relationship with, because when I first started getting into wine, my brother went to a wine shop and said, I need to get a really cool, weird wine for my sister because she's getting into it. What can you offer? And the wine shop owner said, let me give you this red bottle of Gaillac. Now, I can't remember whether it was made from Duras or Fur, because there's obviously all these indigenous red grape varieties there. But it also very often is in a bottle shape that's actually quite weird. It's like got a bit fat bottle shape. If people Google it, they'll see. I mean, now, unfortunately, everyone's being more modern. And so, but there is a slightly different bottle that many of them use. And so for me, straight away, of all of the Southwest wine regions, Gaillac has always been on my list of just a really cool, weird wine region, because
nice.
it's one of the original wine regions. If you ignore the Mediterranean coast of France, as the Romans were traveling, they got here way before they got to Bordeaux. This would have been way bigger than Bordeaux back in the past. And so it's a shame it's forgotten now. And it's cool to kind of start playing around with lots of these.
Oh, so I need to travel a bit more or taste a bit more from that area then.
You do. I mean, there's also Prune Lard, which is a red grape variety, but this is a white grape variety podcast. We can't talk about, but that's the mother or father of Malbec.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because that's, where Malbec has come from. So there's some really, really interesting grape varieties down there. And of course, if you look at where Gaillac is, it's in the southwest of France, but it's more inland than Bordeaux. So it does still have a maritime oceanic influence, but it's warmer. It's got more of that Mediterranean feel. So it's about nearly 3 hours from Bordeaux, but it's only about less than an hour from Toulouse. And again, probably just a bit more to Carcassonne, which I was enjoying the Mediterranean vibes of the Languedoc. So actually, this is closer to the Languedoc than it is to Bordeaux. So for people to get an idea of it being warmer as well. So you can get
warmer.
Richer, yeah, exactly. Richer
Right
flavors.
now we do.
So it's really easy to fly into Toulouse. So actually, if it's less than an hour from Toulouse, this is a region that
super easy to get
could
to
be
then.
quite
Definitely.
So what were you drinking? Was there a specific wine that you remember drinking?
Oh, do you know what? I can't actually think what it was off the top of my head. I did taste it. Like I said, I tasted it at this trade tasting, and then I proceeded to order many cases of it for my tastings. But it was, I think, towards the beginning of this year. So that is now fallen out of my head.
Lucky for you, because it's fallen out of your head, I have written down from doing the research on who might be some iconic producers. If, for instance, my American listeners, for sure, if they don't, we're so lucky here in the UK to just go into a supermarket. That's ridiculous. We are so lucky. Everyone that's living here, be grateful. But there is a winery called Domaine Plachol. I actually looked up the pronunciation for that, so I actually believe that I'm pronouncing it beautifully. That you would spell that Plageoles. So very different to how you would pronounce Plachol.
I would never have got to Plachol from that.
Precisely. But they have worked really hard actually restoring loads of history in their family and restoring these indigenous varieties. So they are a really, really good producer from that region to check out. And also Domaine Girard. And that's spelt Gayrard, and they're biodynamic, and they're really...
That was the one. That is definitely not how I pronounced it.
Look, it's spelled like Domaine Gayrard, isn't it?
That's how I said it.
Gayrard.
I am just that cultured.
So I literally... everybody, for when you want to, it takes me ages to see how you're going to pronounce this stuff, but I go onto YouTube and I try and find a video from the estate or somebody who's native, like doing a tasting on that wine. And even if they're speaking French, I just wait to try and hear the time when they say Domaine.
That's very good.
Yeah. And so one of the family members, he said it was Domaine Girard.
Okay.
Or was it Girard?
Well, I think I might have to do another order of that, actually. Domaine Girard.
I've just realised, though, I say je, maybe it was Guer. I think it's actually gear. Oh my God. Even me, I've wrote it down how it's supposed to be pronounced. Gira. Anyway, apologies,
if anyone
everyone.
drops into this podcast at a random point, it'll just be us going
and saying, what the hell are you doing? Listen here, we're here to help and broaden everybody's eyes,
I don't know if we're broadening pronunciations that well, to be honest, but we're doing our best.
This wine is great. I think actually, because it does have, it's soft and it has these aromatics, I think this would be really nice with some actually spicier Asian dishes. You know, if everyone, again, you're getting some Asian takeaway.
Can totally see that, yeah. Bit of Thai, bit of pad Thai with this, actually.
Precisely. Yes. It's a less acidic Riesling-esque kind of wine.
Yeah,
so it's fair, still, Anyway, so I think that's super, super fun. Okay, right. Let's go to a grape variety, an Italian one that actually I think is easier.
Yes. We know how to say this one.
Caricante.
Caricante,
I fully support this. I'm a massive fan of anything Sicilian, and especially from the volcanic soils of Etna. So talk to me about why Caricante is on your list.
So firstly, I love volcanoes and everything that they do for wine. Mm-hmm. You really can. I do think out of all of the different terroirs across the world, for me, anything volcanic soiled is you can just taste it so clearly, can't you? It's just, and I love it. I love it so much.
It's like a steely, a slight earthiness. It's very, very difficult to describe, but it really helps it with the lift and the freshness and the brightness of the fruit.
Yeah, even. Brightness, I think, is a really nice way to put it, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, this Caricante grows on the volcanic slopes of Mount Etna. And it has done for over 1,000 years. It's another one of those.
Like Koshu.
Koshu. Incredible. And is the key grape behind white wines made under the Etna DOC. So 60% minimum for the standard Etna Bianco. And Etna Bianco, just an incredible wine. If you really like those fresh minerals, styles of white that aren't difficult to drink, but just have that something extra, that little X factor, just Etna Bianco, you've got to go for it. You have to. And this is one I find since I went, which was 2 years ago now. No, was it? Not, yeah, it wasn't this year, it was the year before. I've started seeing it more now. Like you said, we're so lucky in the UK, aren't we? With the variety on the shelves. But I have started seeing, like Assyrtiko, I think it's just starting to grow a bit in popularity and people are starting to hear about it a little bit more and see it around a little bit more. So I think this is an easier one to find if you haven't tried it yet. Super high diurnal temperatures around Etna, which just helps the grapes ripen really slowly, which just helps them keep the acidity well into September. So you just have so much flavour packed into it, but still keeping that really fresh acidity. It's just wonderful, isn't it?
You're quite right. Like high acidity, we should high acidity and minerality should be like highlighted, you know, I think. I'm trying again, because it's like when we say minerality, what does that mean? But it's like a smoky minerality to it. And you can even get like this.
You do feel like you're tasting the ash and the smoke coming out of the volcano, which is quite mad.
Anyone who's been listening to my podcast will know I mention this all the time. Sorry, I mention the same stories because it's just me. But I climbed up Mount Etna, and that is a perfect way if you don't understand what does ash and volcanic soils taste like. And when the wind is blowing, it will blow volcanic ash onto your face, onto your lips, and you'll lick your lips because that's just what we do sometimes. And you will actually taste it. And it's such a good experience doing something like that. Obviously, you and I are potentially crazy enough to go and get wet stones and lick them and do things that most people won't do.
What you're talking about.
But everybody who just goes to Mount Etna, whether you want to or not, you can basically lick the volcanic ash because it's going to be on your face. And so it's so peculiar and it's so interesting in that delicate way with these beautiful kind of citrusy, orangey, lemony vibes to have maybe a bit of mint, a bit of this tiny bit of herbal nutty spice, and then that lovely smoky minerality. Totally agree. Totally agree.
And interestingly, I just saw as well looking that Laithwaite's and Kew Gardens have collaborated to make one.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, that's really unique.
Well, actually, Laithwaite's and Kew Gardens teamed up because is it part of their botanical range? It's to help support the botanicals. Yeah. They did that with a Cremant as well in the Loire Valley. So they've obviously got a series of, again, different wines.
Nice. Cool. It's really exciting, isn't it, to see that so many different companies are expressing these kind of and showing off these unusual grape varieties and actually giving someone else another chance to shine.
Totally, 100%. And, and it's funny, like you're not only talking about, I was just thinking about the grape varieties that you've picked. You picked Chasselas, which again very often grows on these really, really steep slopes. But actually, and one of the advantages that because of, say, for instance, if it's grown in the Vaud or you've got the light shining from the Lake Geneva, shines up, you get exactly the same thing in Etna as well. The Mediterranean, the light shines up. So it's like a reflection. So there's lots of, it's interesting, like whether we're talking about volcanic soil. So you've got Assyrtiko and now obviously Caricante here.
I've obviously got a style I like.
and again, Chasselas and Etna are on the hills. It's just really interesting. But again, cooler climate, vine stress and things. It's peculiar. Each one is obviously still going to do its own individual thing. But the light reflection from the Mediterranean on Etna is something quite special there as well. So do you have some favorites?
So I've told you about the Fendant, obviously the Assyrtiko from Chateau Umcia.
Oh, no. I want to know your favourites. I want your Etna Blanco or Bianco, we should say, actually.
So one of my favourites that I visited while I was there was Donna Fugata.
Yay!
Which we love, don't we? Not only are the bottles super cool, all their artwork is just phenomenal. And they have wineries all around Sicily. It's not just Etna. I went to the Etna one, but they have them in all different parts, which is really cool. Because then you taste the difference in while it's the same grape varieties pretty much, they all taste so different depending on where they've been grown. I feel like you have been there as well.
Oh my God, I have. And yes, first of all, what's it called? It's called Sul Vulcano and the Donna Fugata. And it's such a beautiful picture of like a woman. I think she is the mountain with her hair like blowing in the, anyway,
it's such a gorgeous picture. Yeah. Wow.
I've just moved into my house and I'm now looking at artwork and I'm thinking like, something like that would be so cool. Anyway, maybe I should speak to them. But yes, totally Donna Fugata. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, they make the amazing sweet wine, Donna Fugata, full stop. So I'm glad you brought them up. Obviously Planeta, again, they are also another winery, family owned, has I think 6 wineries across the whole island. I obviously went to their winery in Etna, but they make beautiful, beautiful wines on Etna, red and white.
Oh, also there's Colomba Bianca.
Okay.
Which is Italy's largest organic producer, which is quite cool, but they're based in Sicily.
Ah.
And they're really good they do Zabibo, I get a lot.
Okay, yeah.
It's another fun grape, actually, we could have spoken about. Well, it's Muscat, but they call it Zabibo.
Yeah.
Very fun to say if everyone wants to have a go. Zabibo. Yeah, they're really great. And they're sort of around £10-12 a bottle. So really nice, kind of very floral. Well, as you know, as Muscat is very floral and just gorgeous and pretty.
But yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, also then I know I didn't visit them, but Bernati is a producer that also does great Etna wines. And actually some of them are super premium, very expensive. So if somebody wants to go all out, Bernati is a good one to kind of check out. And they make a really good Superiore. And I think you mentioned already, if it's a normal Etna Bianco, it has to be 60% of Caricante, but it's going to be 80% of this grape variety if it's the Superiore. So they can blend in other varieties like Catarato, but it will be less so if you, and that's another variety we could talk about, but obviously no more today. Okay, so I have one question to finish off this. This is a festive podcast, of course, so with Christmas just around the corner, what if you were hosting a holiday meal with these wines, would you pull one specifically, or do you feel like you can think of a Christmas recipe that one's going to go with perfectly if someone wants to get their hands on it now?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think definitely for if you're a turkey dinner Christmas kind of gal or guy, Chasselas and the one de Louis. I've lost it already. I think they both would actually be really gorgeous with sort of chicken, turkey, that kind of style.
Yeah.
If we're doing kind of our smoked salmon prawn cocktail vibes, then we've got to get into the Assyrtiko and the Koshu. And then I know normally, we're bubbly girls, aren't we? We like some bubbles at Christmas for sure.
Yes.
But I actually did think if when you're feeling quite sluggish after eating all that food all day long, I actually think Etna Bianco would be a really nice sprucer-upper.
Okay.
I think that would kind of reinvigorate you for the rest of the evening.
Love that. In between maybe lunch and dinner, just to keep you going.
I love you do lunch and dinner. Don't you just do lunch mass and then just pick it?
No, that's true.
Left.
Yeah, exactly. Like normally cheese at the end of the day.
When you're having that small break of eating, Etna Bianco can bring you back to life.
Oh dear. Thank you so much for taking us through the whites.
Oh, you're
Fabulous.
So welcome. Thank you.
Jacinta is back next week to give you her 5 must-try red wine grape recommendations. So make sure you tune in. But for now, I will finish us off with a wine quote, as always. And this is from Karen McNeil, who is the author of best-selling The Wine Bible. And she said, "A grape's character is a passport to its past." So I hope this quote and the episode is a reminder that every sip is an invitation to explore new regions, histories, and the untold stories behind lesser-known varieties. Wishing you all a week filled with festive cheer, delicious food, cherished wine moments, and joyful times with loved ones. And whilst you are feeling joyful, don't forget, if you have 2 minutes, a review on Apple Podcast, a rating on Spotify, or putting up a screenshot of this podcast on your social media account, all makes the podcast more discoverable. So until next week, wine friends, cheers to you.